Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me? One last mic check before we get started and let everyone, we're going to get on the YouTubes and the internets and all that other stuff and get things going. Thanks for being here. My name is Fields Mosley. I'm the Communications Director for Maricopa County. Really want to appreciate so many people coming in locally and from national publications as well. Welcome to everybody who's joining us online. Hoping to make this available to as many as possible so we can talk about the primary election coming up next week. You know, we put a lot of effort into being accessible, accountable to the residents of Maricopa County. We consider you guys our partners in doing that as we disseminate some information, talk about the primary coming up, and if you have questions about the general election as well, that plan has already been approved by the Board of Supervisors, and we're happy to talk about some of those items as well. You probably know we're one of the fastest growing and most populous counties in the country. Certainly one of the most watched as Arizona has become a swing state. That's been a common thread over the last few years. And we are also the third largest election jurisdiction in the country by number of registered voters, so the third largest. With me today, we have three speakers, and they are going to talk to you about some important information coming up for the primary on July 30th next week. In Arizona, elections are administered, of course, at the county level, overseen in part by the Board of Supervisors, also portions of this by the county recorder as well. Our first speaker today, of course, he's been a fierce advocate for free and fair elections, and I'm talking about Supervisor Bill Gates for District 3 here in Maricopa County. Welcome, Bill Gates.
Thanks, Fields. Great to see everybody here today. Thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us. Although I will not be on the ballot for re-election this year, you'll be seeing quite a bit of me over the next few months as we provide to all of you critical information about elections here in Maricopa County. We are here to talk about the primary next Tuesday. And it's very important that everyone understands that my colleagues and I on the Board of Supervisors are absolutely committed to safe, secure, and transparent elections. And not only that, but also committed to the various options that our voters have in Maricopa County. I would argue there's no jurisdiction in the country that has as many options as our voters do here in Maricopa County. You want to vote early by mail, you can do it. If you want to vote early in person, that's available to you. And if you want to vote on Election Day, the good old-fashioned way, you can do it that way too. And that's something that all of my colleagues and I are very much committed to. And the only way that we can do that is through partnerships. And we are grateful for all the partnerships. And at the top of that list, I would certainly include our partnership with the Maricopa County Recorder, Stephen Richer. So as a reminder for everyone, Recorder Richer is responsible for voter registration as well as vote by mail. Whereas the Board of Supervisors, we oversee voting in person both early and on Election Day, and then of course we oversee tabulation. But it's not only that partnership. We also have partnerships that are so invaluable with our poll workers. We wouldn't be able to do it without them. And as well as those temporary election workers who do all sorts of tasks for us, including answering phones and making deliveries of supplies. All these things, if it wasn't for that, we would not be able to run these elections. We're grateful to the partnerships we have with law enforcement. Much has been said about that, and we can't stress that enough, as well as our partners in community organizations that get out information about our elections. And maybe the most important, though, are the partnerships that we have with the political parties. They provide observers, they provide staff to us, and we are grateful for all these folks that really make this a team effort. Now, unfortunately, we're talking about and thinking about political violence in our country right now in a way that we haven't in a long time. We know that's on people's minds, and that's why we are committed to providing a safe and secure experience both for our elections workers as well as those people who go to vote. And that is a partnership that has been in place now for many years. Because we've been so successful and had experience at major events in Maricopa County, we have strong lines of communication among the different levels of law enforcement, as well as with us and our other partners, cities and towns across Maricopa County. So we're going to lean into that to make sure that everyone has a safe and secure experience during this primary election. And finally, I want to touch a little bit on early voting. So under Arizona law, we actually start voting 27 days before Election Day. So in early July, people received their ballots at home if they have decided to receive those, if they've asked for those from us here at Maricopa County. And we also have been, since early July, providing people that option of voting early in person. But that's starting to wind down now. So if you have a ballot at home, mail-in ballot, today's the day. This is your last day to get that mailed in to us to ensure that that will count. If you aren't able to mail that in today, you've got several other options. You can take that mail-in ballot and drop it off at a drop box somewhere across Maricopa County. You can also take it in to one of our vote centers and drop it off. And also, if you say, hey, you know what, I want to vote in person, then you can still go ahead and vote in person. So you have a lot of those options available. Again, want to thank everyone for their attention. And now to hear a little bit more about how and where to vote in person, as well as more details on tabulation, I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Elections Director, Jennifer Lewer.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. As Supervisor Gates mentioned, my name is Jennifer Lewer, Liewer, and I'm a Deputy Elections Director for Communications. As the supervisor mentioned, today's the last day to mail in your ballot, so I want to talk a little bit about voting in person, both early and on Election Day. Currently, we have 44 vote centers open. These are able to service any voter from around Maricopa County, regardless of where you live or what district you are voting in. On Election Day this year, we will have 223 locations available for voters who want to cast their ballot on Election Day. There are three key things that we want voters to keep in mind when they are coming out to cast their vote. One, with the Arizona primary, all registered voters are able to vote. This is a little different from the presidential preference election in that independents and party not declared are able to vote a ballot. If they show up in person, they just need to let their vote center worker know which ballot they would like to vote, and it will be printed on site. Second, if you are voting in person or on Election Day, you do need to bring a government-issued ID or a form of approved ID. There are several things that voters can provide, and that is available at getid.maricopa.vote. And then last, and maybe most important, is we want to encourage voters to visit locations.maricopa.vote to find the closest vote center. This website has become extremely informational in the last few years. We have wait times. We have a map now that's an interactive map that can show you where the closest voting location is. And if you are going to vote early, I would highly recommend that you get on and find out the hours of operation and which vote centers are open prior to Election Day. In May, we presented our elections plan to the Board of Supervisors, and this is the fun part for the media. These are numbers. Wanted to give you some statistics that represent Maricopa County. As of July 1st, we had right around 2.4 million registered voters, 2,419,609 to be exact. In our election plan, we did projections. This helps us prepare and plan for serving voters, and so we projected that we're going to receive at least 623,000 early ballots. This is inclusive of people who mail in their ballot, those who will drop off their ballot, as well as those who vote early in person. We expect at the very minimum 94,000 individuals to show up on Election Day to cast their ballot. Per the plan, The total turnout is a range between 718,000 to 894,000, or right around the 30% mark for turnout is what has been projected. As of close of Monday, we have already tabulated, as of close of Monday, we have received 395,000 early ballots, and we have tabulated more than 211,000. So let's talk a little bit about tabulation. On election night, Arizona law requires that we do not release results until an hour after the polls have closed. So at 8 p.m., we will be doing a release of results. This release will include the ballots that have been tabulated up through Friday before Election Day. So if you get your ballot in early, your vote will be a part of the release at 8 p.m. As our vote centers close in Maricopa County, you have the ability to actually have your ballot tabulated at a vote center. So those tabulation equipment takes your vote and keeps it on a memory card. And so when the vote centers close, the poll workers then take those memory cards, bipartisan teams then take them to our Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center. Those results are uploaded into our server. And so as vote centers close throughout the night, we are able then to post additional results. After election night, we will be tabulating all of the results for early ballots that came in either on election day, the Monday prior, or the weekend before. And as we process those and tabulate those ballots, we will be uploading those results to the website as well. We're actually excited to have a web page that we hope simplifies this process a little bit more. It is countingballots.maricopa.vote. You can visit the web page to understand how the results are reported and hopefully provide key information for those who are interested in understanding how we count ballots in Maricopa County. One last thing that I want to point out is we do have a new deadline for curing a signature or a provisional ballot. This is based on legislation that was passed this previous session. So we have 5 calendar days now to cure your signature or provisional ballot, which puts that deadline at Sunday, August 4th. So now I'm going to turn this over to Zach Shira, Assistant County Manager.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zach Shira, Z-A-C-H-S-C-H-I-R-A. Like Jennifer said, I'm Assistant County Manager for Elections and External Affairs. I'd like to take some time today at the start to praise the hard work of our team in their preparations for the 2024 cycle, and also set some expectations for next week. Over the past year, the Board of Supervisors has invested heavily in elections, more than $15 million in new money towards processes and equipment that directly impact the efficiency and security of our operation. The bottom line, we are well-resourced, well-planned, and well-trained for next Tuesday's primary and the whole 2024 cycle. Elections planning is a year-round endeavor and not a part-time job. And although it's important to know that we're the most well-resourced, planned, and trained that we've ever been, there is still no such thing as a perfect election. We are continually focused on creating backup plans because it is not possible to anticipate each and every issue that may occur during an election. In the event that something does not go as expected, staff plans a myriad of scenarios and redundancies that can address things like severe weather, inaccurate information, human error, and technology challenges. This past Friday was a good example of a technology challenge completely out of our hands that impacted the county, that impacted not only the county, but businesses around the globe. While we can't anticipate every situation, we are committed to ensuring that every eligible Maricopa County voter who wants to vote has the opportunity to vote. And the bottom line is from Friday that Maricopa County voters were still served while other major industries continued to be shut down. And as we've all seen in the recent past, the use of technology in elections has become a point of contention for some voters. But it is important to understand the benefits of technology and what it brings to elections administration, not the least of which is our vote center model and the unprecedented level of access it provides to voters. As a registered voter, you can vote you can receive your ballot at any one of our 223 vote centers on Election Day or during the 27 days before Election Day at locations that are open. This model provides you with your correct ballot wherever you are in town and ensures that you already haven't voted, preventing anybody from casting multiple ballots. As recently as 2012, while using less technology and a precinct-based model, Maricopa County would see more than 120,000 provisional ballots in a typical election. That's 120,000 voters who had to have their eligibility confirmed or were potentially at the wrong location and didn't have their vote count. That number plummets to just a few thousand now that technology can ensure that eligible voters get the right ballot and vote the right contests. Our mission here is to make sure eligible voters who want to participate have the opportunity to do so, and that is why we prioritize making sure community members have access to accurate information about voting and our voting systems. Unfortunately, on Friday, we once again saw those hoping to sow doubt and chaos in our democracy push false narratives about elections administration. Let me be clear. Maricopa County will continue to work to dispel falsehoods about elections while remaining neutral and nonpartisan. Good people ran lawful elections in Maricopa County in 2020 and 2022 and are doing so again in 2024. Our full-time elections staff, supplemented by thousands of members of the community, are trained to ensure we are following the law. And we employ individuals from all parties and walks of life with the common goal of conducting elections that are safe, transparent, and fair. But ultimately, we rely upon you, the voters and media partners, to ensure that you are seeking and receiving information from trusted sources. Assets like county web pages, newsletters, and official social media accounts are the most reliable sources when it comes to information about elections. We update these in real time as best we can, and have a team of communicators willing to help answer questions, provide context, and additional information when you need it. Those websites are maricopa.vote, locations.maricopa.vote, and beballotready.vote, as well as social media handles at Maricopa Vote and at Maricopa County. And with that, I'll hand it back to Fields so we can take questions.
Thank you very much to Zach, Jennifer, and of course Supervisor Gates. And hopefully that answered some of your questions, but I know it won't be all of them, so we'll open it up. We do have a microphone over here to the right, and this is for the purpose of the people that are viewing this on YouTube, so they can hear your questions as well and doesn't require me to repeat your question. Please let me know who you want to address the question to when you ask your question. And before we start, I also want to remind everybody that wants to be present at McTech on Election Day, whether it's the primary election or the general election, or even to attend our pre-election press conferences, we ask that you get press credentials, all that information on maricopa.gov. If you have questions about this process, caomedia@maricopa.gov is the shared inbox in my office, and we're happy to answer your questions and get more on that. So, but all the information is online, and it'll direct you to an appointment system so you can come here to the first floor of this building and get your credential. I imagine everybody in this room has already gotten it or has certainly been approved, or you wouldn't be here. So let's move on to questions now. I saw Yvonne had her hand up, and Yvonne, if
Can I just speak loudly, or do I need to use
you got to use the microphone.
Okay.
Otherwise, nobody out there in internet land can hear
Okay.
you.
Can you give us a sense of very specifically what the staffing situation looks like for the tabulation, the vote counting processes, not just for the primary, but for the general election, and how late we can expect vote counting to take place on like that critical 1 week period?
Okay, just to be clear, you want to know staffing levels presently, what we're looking at going toward the general, and also any delays in tabulation. Is that correct? I think Scott Jarrett's your man on this. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Scott Jarrett, Maricopa County Elections Director. That's SCOTT-JARRETT. So currently we are been hiring for the primary election, and I'm happy to report that we are over 96% hired at our voting locations, as well as at our McTech Central Counting Facility. So this is actually one of the highest percentages we've been compared to prior election cycles at this point in time. So as far as our tabulating of and releasing of results, We'll have daily reports after Election Day, usually in the evening each day as we progress through the cycle. And it's really hard for us to make projections on exactly when we will be completed with our counting and the different percentages, because that will all depend on when voters, and if they're voting early, and when they return those ballots to us. Now, we are expecting that there will be some voters that choose to vote and drop off their early ballot on Election Day. And just those quantities will all then impact how quickly we can progress through and get those final results tabulated. I will say that we are looking at August 12th is the day that we will then present those final canvass results to the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors.
Bianca? Or why don't we go to Jen Fifield and then we'll go to Bianca?
I have three, so I'll just keep getting back in line.
Okay.
Great.
Why don't we start with one if it's really
I
detailed?
know. With the primary date move, did that change your turnout projections because summer vacations, or you're assuming that would affect turnout in any way?
Jennifer?
At the time that we presented the plan to the Board of Supervisors, the primary date had already been moved, and so we were able to accommodate the July 30th primary date in those projections.
Did that reduce it from prior years then, or no?
This is a presidential cycle, and the last presidential cycle that we had was during COVID for 2020. Each, I think, general presidential cycle presents a different set of circumstances. And while we do our best to do projections, we know that depending on voter interest and what's on the ballot, there's so many things that can impact it. So we do use a wide range of what we expect for turnout to ensure that we have the resources. And we tend to be more on the side of more people turning out, so that we can ensure that we're not caught understaffed or under-resourced.
Hi. I think my question is probably best directed to Scott. The RNC has written a letter publicly raising questions around the impact of the CrowdStrike outage on Maricopa County's elections. Can you clarify exactly what the impact was and why there was any impact from the outage?
I'll take that one. So we're aware of the letter from the RNC. We'll respond to the RNC at the appropriate time. We already publicly explained what happened to our ballot on demand system on Friday during the day. We opened at 9 a.m. with 4 vote centers open and had a rolling opening all day long as those were fixed, and 40 were open before the end of the day. None of the tabulators were affected by this. They're on an air gap system. They're not connected to the internet.
And then just to follow up on that, is there work being done to ensure, I know pretty much every industry across the globe was impacted by this, but now that it's happened, is there any work being done to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again moving forward?
Sure, we'll take a look at this, and when we do this with every technical, you try to anticipate everything. I think Mr. Scherer already made it clear that even though we thought we had anticipated everything, something happened. So technology is like that. We feel like we had a fairly low impact, and still almost 400 people voted on Friday. And so, yes, we'll take a look at this. Certainly, we want to ensure that that's not going to happen again.
Last question, then I'll move on. In this age of misinformation around elections, and especially all of the extra eyes and scrutiny on Maricopa County specifically, I guess I'm just curious, how have you guys been able to manage dealing with the misinformation as it continues to ramp up, while also handling the heavy lift that is running an election?
Sure. I think, Jennifer talked a little bit about resources, and we have a lot of communications resources as well, and ways to try to get information out to the public. And we understand some people might not believe us, might not see us as the trusted source. We certainly are the trusted source. We're the ones that are conducting the operations and conducting the elections, and we encourage people to go to the elections website and take a look at all the information that is there. There's even a video library on YouTube if you want to see some of these processes laid out in video. It tells you exactly how tabulation works, for example. And that new webpage that Jennifer's team just stood up, that's also going to be a great place to go to understand what happens to the ballot after voting takes place. So I think we're doing a lot of things in the communications front to try to front load this and provide all the factual information that's out there. We can't stop people from delivering incorrect information, and hopefully that is tamped down by the correct information being there, but we've kind of seen how this cycle works over and over again in recent years. Also, this cycle, we are spending a substantial amount of money in the advertising market. We try to drive people to BeBallotReady.vote. They can see their status. They can see when the last election they voted in, what that looks like. When was the last time they voted? You know, are they signed up for early voting? Are they going to have to go to a polling place? And so we're spending a lot of money out there also to try to make sure people understand how to check on their own voting history and how to understand how to proceed forward with this. So I think all the resources are in place. We're certainly adapting as more things come out, and you know, whether that's misinformation or just misunderstandings. And we'll continue to do that through this cycle.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, everyone.
Hi, Sasha.
Hi. Quick question also related to CrowdStrike. You talked about creating redundancies. Obviously, in the case of the global tech outage, that happened during early voting. So one redundancy, in addition to the fact that vote centers were already open, and some of them weren't shut down by this, would have been for people to come back the next day. But say it happened on election day. Can you walk me through what the redundancy might look like if there was a massive tech problem on election day?
I think we're going to, we'll talk about that at a later date. We're not, we have a lot to understand about what happened the other day. That's one of the number of things. Jennifer, do you want to add anything to this? Okay.
Election day provides a lot of different considerations than something impacting early voting. And so we have to take that into consideration when we're planning for something that might occur on election day. One of the important things to remember is there are a lot more resources. We have, as I mentioned, we will have over 240 vote centers open. So if a vote center does go down, people are able to choose from a different vote center, but we will have increased resources, increased technology personnel, and we may have to take into considerations working with the political parties, whether or not the courts may need to be involved. But we are prepared, should something occur on election day, to be able to be responsive without knowing that what exactly might happen. And obviously, you can do the best you can to plan for things, and I think our staff being flexible, responsive, our IT staff were up in the middle of the night on site at McTech helping get computers rebooted. It was really all hands on deck, and Maricopa County voters can know that we are dedicated, and even if that means getting up in the middle of the night and coming into work, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure that everybody who wants to cast a vote has the ability to do so.
Thank you.
I knew Jennifer would have a better answer than me. All right, Cameron, how are you?
Good. Apologize if this is redundant at this point, but wanted to kind of clarify, if I was a voter that was impacted by this outage and because the ballot on demand printers weren't working, was I issued a provisional ballot or was I flat out turned away?
The only service that was available at those locations that where you could not check in was to drop off your early ballot.
Okay. And then follow up to that, we kind of talked about election day preparations. Are more IT employees part of that additional resource
Absolutely.
That's part of that?
Absolutely.
And then do you guys have any plans to hire more in light of this outage?
Are there more hires going on? We're almost maxed out, as Scott already shared, but we do have a large IT staff at the county. Also, the recorder's office has a large IT staff as well, and then we employ or have those folks volunteer their time to be what we've called, you've probably heard in the past, we call them T-Techs, and they are available and they're spread out to various locations in the county so they can respond regionally, because we're such a large county, to any sort of technical problems. They can deal with a whole host of different issues. So I think that we're well positioned to take care of, most of the IT problems. Now, Friday was a pretty unique event. I mean, let's ask Delta Airlines, I suppose, but we know that was a new one.
And because it was outside of your control, is there any plans in future elections to maybe switch to a different system? I'm not too well versed in that world, but maybe use a different system that maybe has had less issues like CrowdStrike has?
I can't speak to whether or not CrowdStrike, just so you know, I mean, my personal my laptop that I use here at the county is on my personal laptop. It had the blue screen of death. It was turned on overnight. I woke up to the blue screen of death, and then we found out about the election centers. So I think that is there a notion to move away from Microsoft products? I think they're pretty ubiquitous, and CrowdStrike is a large service that helps us on the cybersecurity front. I'm sure I can't say if we're reevaluating that, but certainly we're asking for
Do you
some
know,
answers.
this is probably not a question for you, do you know if other counties throughout the state use CrowdStrike as well?
I don't know, but I know they're a global company.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, can I ask two more?
Sure.
Okay, the first one's fast. So typically we see the 8 p.m. drop, and then we see like 9:30 election day drop because of the counting that's happening at the vote centers now. Do you have a prediction for when we will see that second drop?
The prediction. I'll let Jennifer take this one.
We do not have predictions, but what we can tell you is that we will be deploying additional staff members to the vote centers on election night to actually help with close down procedures and to assist in counting the affidavit envelopes. Our poll workers put in 15-hour days. They've been there since 5 o'clock in the morning. And so we will be able to provide a couple of fresh eyes, if you will, to a vote center to assist with all of those close down procedures, so it doesn't have a huge impact on when we report results. But the reality is it will take them longer to shut down a vote center if there are hundreds or thousands of affidavit envelopes to count.
Thank you. Last one, we know that there were the printer issues in the last major election. What have you done to testing this time around to ensure that we're good printer-wise?
Thank you. So we have actually replaced all of the printers that had the issue. That's just shy of $9 million, but we have expanded our stress testing to include not only a expanded stress testing for anytime we implement a new piece of equipment or we've updated any of our technology or software on our printers, but we've also then election specific. So we're just choosing a larger sampling, and we've thoroughly stress tested these printers, and we know that they're ready to be used for this election. One thing to note is the ballot style and the length and the size of the ballot that we're using for this primary election is the exact same length and style that we used in the March presidential preference election and many of the last 6 elections that we've had since November 2022. So the question was, what is the length and style? So it's 8 inches by 14 inches is the ballot length and style for this election.
Please go ahead.
Hi. After the recent assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, have Maricopa County Elections increased security at all, whether it be at MCTEC or at polling locations? Has there been any change to the security plan?
I won't go into specifics about security operations, but I can say this, that we have a robust security plan. We're working with the county sheriff's office as well as local law enforcement. It was mentioned earlier in the previous comments that there's this constant communication with the various levels from the federal, county, and local law enforcement. And I know some efforts have been made as well to directly communicate with police chiefs because obviously our vote centers are all over the county, right? They're in various jurisdictions. So, it may not always be, or local law enforcement may be the first people on a scene. If there is anything like that, we certainly are hopeful that everyone is, we're not going to have these kinds of problems, and we're going to have a nice, smooth election day next week and in November. And, but just know that the level of security is high at this point. And Supervisor Gates, would you like to add something?
And I would agree with everything that Fields said, and I don't think we can emphasize this enough. Unfortunately, sadly, the world that we lived in, when we put this plan together, as we have coordinated with the sheriff and the local law enforcement, we had to prepare for things like this. So this was not a complete surprise, obviously a tragic situation, but we, particularly here in Maricopa County, have understood the reality that our elections workers are dealing with. And back in 2022, we committed to the safety of each and every one of those people working at McTech, and we're committed to the safety of each and every person who's choosing to vote in person. That is a solemn promise that we've made to the people of Maricopa County, and we, talk to the team here at the board level, the sheriff, the recorder, and we ask them what they need, and we will provide them the support and the resources that they need.
How's it going? Zach Proletsky with AZ Family. Good to meet you in person.
Yeah, you too,
Been
Zach.
getting a lot of questions about this global outage last week. Last month, a temporary election worker allegedly stole a security fob. What have you guys learned from these two incidents? Has it reinforced or questioned your confidence in the security? And have there been any changes made from these two particular incidents?
So I guess what I can say is let's call it an insider threat. Do you hire somebody and something, they don't behave as you expect them to behave. We do have expectations for all our employees, whether they're temporary or permanent. We trust our employees with a lot of critical information, certainly critical equipment, but there's no single piece of equipment that's a single point of failure either. So you also saw, as that case in particular, Mr. Ringfield, as that developed, there are cameras everywhere, and he was the key fob or the fob was recovered within 24 hours. He was arrested. Other evidence has come out, as I understand it. I've seen in you guys reporting about that. So I think we have a lot of security systems in place, certainly background checks and that sort of thing as we go through the hiring process, and we'll continue those as well. But we're always looking. Continuous improvement it should be our tagline here, because we're always looking for ways to improve. And again, I don't want to go into specifics of security, but we're always looking for ways to improve those situations so we don't have that kind of outcome again.
And I guess just to follow up, in response to that and the response you guys had, getting them so quickly, does that reinforce your confidence in the fact that these elections are going to be safe, the one next week and the one in November?
Zach?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important for everybody to know that we train for these types of situations, including insider threats. We've gone through tabletop exercises where we've gone through each and every scenario that we can imagine where we hire somebody and they don't behave the way that they should internally. It's important to us that we hire folks from all walks of life, both political parties, right? We don't want to stop people at the door. It's actually one of the best ways to convince people to trust the system, to bring it in and have them see it. And so we don't want to limit that. We want to encourage people to come work for us. But the public should know that a situation like Walter Ringfield is a situation that we've planned for, we've drilled for, and quite frankly, I think we were successful at stopping somebody who was a threat to the system.
Just two quick things.
Sure.
First one, has there been any specific threats made against the primary election or the general election?
No. Well, go ahead, Jennifer. Excuse me? Yeah. Not that I'm aware of. I think you should direct that to the sheriff's office.
Second question, you mentioned that a substantial amount of money was spent on advertising for Be Ballot Ready. Do you have a
Sure.
dollar amount on that?
Sure. For this particular election, we're at almost $400,000.
400,000. Is that just for the primary or just the
That's
election
just the
season?
primary.
Just for the.
We'll be at about 1.1 for PPE primary and for the general election.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. And Yvonne's back.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you walk us through how poll site books specifically were affected because of the CrowdStrike issue?
So we appreciate that question, and I think everybody has that same question on their mind. But the reality of how the vote centers are set up is it's one whole complete system. The more we talk about what was individually impacted, the more we get into our infrastructure, both cyber and hardware, and we're not going to reveal those details due to the cyber threat that could entail. So we're just going to leave it as the check-in system impacted for now.
Who was responsible for security updates and that IT system?
So the Maricopa County Elections Department utilizes the Recorder's Office for their IT support. We used to be, as many of you know, one elections department. We recently split out. There were some efficiencies and other reasons to do so, but we continue to rely upon the Recorder for the IT part of that operation.
So the security updates function had, if I recall correctly, according to reviews from the 2020 election, been disabled or been turned off. Was that were they reactivated in some fashion?
To my knowledge, they were not reactivated, but we continue to look into why CrowdStrike pushed their update to our site book, to our check-in system at the vote centers.
And as you continue to ask answers, would you cast that as an investigation, as an internal inquiry, as just a series of questions that are being asked to the recorder's office?
Yeah, like Field says, or said earlier, and I've said it many times too, it's almost annoying at this point. We're a process improvement county. Every single time there's an issue that you all see that the public may not even see, we're always reviewing that process internally. We have great partners in the recorder's office. We could not function with any of our voting systems without that partnership on the IT side. So we will work with them to identify what exactly happened, and when we can share things, we will.
Was the recorder's office or any, like his representatives, are they here today, or are they here to answer any of
I
those
do
questions?
think that the recorder's office has folks here for questions afterwards, but not up with us now. Thanks.
I don't see anybody else with their hands raised. Thank you very much for being here today and asking a lot of good questions. We appreciate everything, and we appreciate you guys sharing information. If you need to reach Jennifer and her team over at elections, media at maricopa.gov. That's the email to reach them. You can always reach out to my office as well, and we'll try to get you answers. If you think of something after this press conference and you want us to follow up on something, we'll do our best to get you guys some answers by your deadlines. Other than that, thank you very much. We'll let you guys know, but if you, I assume we'll see some of you next week for the primary election, and certainly as we get closer to the general election. So thank you so much for coming out today and being a part of this. We appreciate it.